General Vextar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, looking out at the stars with satisfaction. His yellow eyes scanned the datapad in his four-fingered hands. Another planet had fallen to the hegemony. Another species had been added to their empire. The general's thick gray skin showed many scars from countless battles. His race, the Kethvar, were natural warriors. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, with bone plates covering their arms and chest. Their strength could crush steel, and their claws could tear through armor. The door hissed open behind him. Commander Zeth walked in, carrying reports from the intelligence division. Zeth's smaller frame still towered over most species in the galaxy. His bone plates were younger and less scarred than the general's, but his loyalty was absolute. "General, we have received new data about the species from Sol 3, Zeth said, holding out a thick folder. The humans. Vextar took the folder and opened it. His mandibles clicked together as he read. This was his way of laughing. The more he read, the louder the clicking became. Other officers on the bridge turned to look. It was rare to see their general show such amusement. "Commander, listen to this," Vextar said, his voice deep and rumbling. "These humans have no natural armor. Their skin is soft and tears easily. They have no claws, no poison, no energy weapons built into their bodies. Their bite force is weaker than a Teruvian child." Zeth looked puzzled. "Then why are we studying them, General?" "Because," Vexitar continued reading, "they somehow managed to develop technology and reach space. But look at these physical measurements. They are tiny. Most barely reach 6 feet in height. They live for less than 100 years. Their bones break easily. They cannot see in the dark. They cannot survive in most atmospheres without artificial help." The general turned the page and his clicking grew louder. "It says here that they have something called emotions that often cloud their judgment. They form attachments to other individuals that make them weak. They even form bonds with other species, including non-intelligent animals. How pathetic. What about their military capabilities?" Zeth asked. "Primitive," Vextar replied. "They fight wars against their own species using metal projectiles and explosive devices. No energy shields, no plasma weapons, no genetic enhancements. They actually send their soldiers into battle without any natural protection. Just cloth and metal plates." The intelligence report included pictures of humans in their military gear. Vextar held up one image showing a human soldier. "Look at this creature, Zeth. It carries weapons because it cannot fight with its own body. It wears artificial armor because its skin is useless. It cannot even breathe the air on most planets. Should we classify them as a Class D species?" Zeth asked. "Class D meant weak and suitable only for basic labor." "Absolutely," Vextar said. "In fact, I believe we may have captured one of their soldiers during the recent raids on the outer systems. Bring it to the interrogation chamber. I want to see this pathetic creature for myself." 20 minutes later, Vextar stood in the interrogation room. The chamber was designed to intimidate prisoners. The walls were dark metal and harsh lights created deep shadows. Most species trembled when brought here. The general had questioned thousands of prisoners over his long career. He knew how to break their spirit within minutes. The door opened and 2 guards entered. Between them walked the human prisoner. Vextar's mandibles began clicking immediately. The creature was even smaller than the report suggested. It barely reached his chest. Its skin was pale and smooth, unmarked by the scars that showed a true warrior's experience. The human wore a simple green uniform made of cloth. No armor plates, no protective shell, no natural weapons visible. The human stood straight and looked directly at him. This surprised Vextar slightly. Most prisoners cowered or begged when they first saw him. But this tiny creature showed no fear in its strange round eyes. "What is your designation, creature?" Vextar asked in Galactic Standard, the common language of the Empire. "Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, Earth Defense Force, Service number 24601, the human replied in a clear, steady voice. Vextar walked around the human, studying it like a specimen. Maria Santos. Such a soft name for a soldier. "Tell me, little one, how many battles have you fought?" 17 major engagements, sir, Santos replied. 17? Vextar's clicking grew louder. "I have fought in over 300 battles. I have conquered 12 worlds. I have killed enemy warriors with my bare hands." He flexed his claws for emphasis. "What weapons do you carry, little soldier?" Santos remained silent as military protocol demanded. She gave only name, rank, and service number to enemy interrogators. "Answer me," Vextar roared, his voice echoing off the chamber walls. Santos did not flinch. She continued to stare straight ahead with that same steady gaze. Vextar studied her uniform. He saw no obvious weapons, no armor plates, no sign of the genetic modifications that most warrior species used. Your species fascinates me, human. You are so weak, yet you somehow convinced yourselves you could be soldiers. Do you know what happens to weak species in this galaxy? Santos said nothing. They become slaves, Vextar continued. They work in our mines, our factories, our construction sites. The strong rule and the weak serve. This is the natural order. He leaned down close to Santos, his massive frame casting a shadow over her small form. You will tell me about Earth's defenses. You will tell me about your military installations. You will tell me everything because you have no choice. Santos met his gaze without wavering. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, Earth Defense Force, Service Number 24601. Vextar straightened up and clicked his mandibles in what sounded like laughter. Very well, little soldier. You wish to be difficult, but I have broken stronger warriors than you, much stronger. He turned to the guards. Take this creature to the labor camps on level 7. Process it with the other Class D species. It is not worth my time to interrogate. As the guards moved to escort Santos out, she spoke for the first time beyond her identification. You should learn more about humans before you dismiss us, General. Vextar turned back, amused. Oh, and what should I learn, little one? That appearances can be deceiving, Santos said calmly. Is that a threat? Vextar asked, his voice carrying mock surprise. No, sir, Santos replied. It's just a fact. The general watched as the guards led the human away. Her words echoed in his mind, but he dismissed them quickly. Facts were what he read in intelligence reports. Facts were what he could see with his own eyes. And the facts were clear. Humans were weak, primitive, and no threat to the mighty hegemony. He returned to his quarters that evening, already forgetting about the small human soldier. There were bigger concerns to address. The campaign against the Andromedan systems required his attention. Real warriors awaited him there, not soft little creatures who thought they could play at being soldiers. Vextar had no way of knowing that his dismissal of humanity would soon become the greatest mistake of his military career. The small, unremarkable prisoner he had just sent to the labor camps would change everything he thought he knew about strength, weakness, and what it truly meant to be a warrior in the vast darkness of space. Maria Santos walked between her guards through the long corridors of the hegemony warship. The metal halls stretched endlessly in both directions, lit by harsh blue lights that hurt her eyes. She kept her military bearing straight, and her expression calm even though her mind was racing. The guards were typical hegemony soldiers. Tall, armored, confident in their superiority over the small human between them. They talked over her head as if she could not understand their language. This was their first mistake. Santos spoke 4 human languages and had studied Galactic Standard for 2 years before her deployment. Another weakling for the camps, the left guard said to his companion. I do not understand why the general even bothered to question it. The intelligence reports say humans are curious creatures, the right guard replied. They explore space even though they are too weak to survive it. Perhaps the general wanted to see one up close. Waste of time, the first guard grumbled. We should have just sent it straight to the labor units. Santos listened to every word while appearing to ignore them. She was gathering intelligence with every step. The guards carried energy weapons at their sides, but no backup power cells that she could see. Their armor had joint gaps at the knees and elbows. Most importantly, they were completely relaxed. They saw her as no threat at all. The processing center was a large room filled with alien beings from dozens of different species. Most were much larger than Santos, but all shared the same defeated posture. Their shoulders slumped, their eyes stayed fixed on the floor, and they moved with the slow shuffle of broken spirits. A hegemony clerk sat behind a metal desk. He looked up as the guards brought Santos forward. His species had gray skin and large black eyes. He seemed bored as he scanned a data pad. Name and species, he said without looking at her. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos. Human, she replied. The clerk's eyes widened slightly. He had clearly never seen a human before. Human, he repeated, typing into his device. From Sol 3, Class D species. Labor assignment, Level 7, Mining Division. He handed her a metal collar. Put this on. It will track your location and deliver pain if you attempt to escape or resist orders. Santos took the collar and examined it briefly before placing it around her neck. The metal was cold against her skin. She could feel a slight electric tingle as it activated. "Move along," one of the guards said, pushing her toward a group of other new prisoners. Santos joined the group and found herself standing next to a creature that looked like a cross between a lizard and a bear. It had green scales and powerful arms, but its head hung low in defeat. "First day?" it asked in broken galactic standard. "Yes," Santos replied. "I am Krex, from Altair 7. Been here 2 cycles. The creature's voice was sad and tired. "What species are you?" "Never seen your kind before, human, from Earth." Krex looked at her with new interest. "Human? The guards were talking about humans yesterday. Said your people are the weakest species they ever captured." "What do you think?" Santos asked. Krex studied her small frame and soft skin. "You do look fragile." "No offense, none taken. Looks can be deceiving." "Maybe," Krex said. "But in here, only strength matters. The strong get better food, easier work assignments, protection from the worst guards. The weak suffer." Before Santos could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed and automated voices announced something in the hegemony language. The prisoners looked around nervously, but the guards seemed unconcerned. "Drill," one guard explained to his colleague. "The general runs combat drills every few cycles to keep the crew sharp." Santos listened carefully as the guards discussed the drill procedures. She learned about emergency protocols, security measures, and crew rotations. Every piece of information could be useful later. The processing continued for hours. Santos was assigned a bunk in dormitory section C7, given basic work clothing, and scheduled for orientation the next morning. Throughout the process, she observed everything: guard patterns, security cameras, locked doors, and most importantly, the attitudes of the various alien species toward each other and toward humans. That night in the dormitory, Santos lay on her narrow bunk surrounded by dozens of other prisoners. The lights had been dimmed but never turned completely off. Whispered conversations filled the room as beings from across the galaxy shared their stories of capture and defeat. A large, insect-like creature in the bunk next to her leaned over. "You are the human," it said in a clicking voice. "I am a human, yes. I am Tixel. My species fought the hegemony for 6 months before we surrendered. We are warriors. We have natural armor. Poisonous bite can see in multiple spectrums, but we lost." Tixel's multiple eyes studied Santos. "Humans have none of these advantages. How did your people even reach space?" "We learned to use tools," Santos said simply. "Tools cannot replace natural strength," another voice said from across the room. This came from a creature that looked like a walking tree with arms. "I am Groot 7. My people are strong like iron, live for thousands of years, can survive in vacuum for short periods. Still, the hegemony defeated us. Yet here you all are," Santos observed quietly. "What do you mean?" Tixel asked. "You all had natural advantages. Armor, strength, long life, special abilities. But you were all defeated. Maybe natural advantages are not the most important thing." The dormitory fell quiet. The other prisoners seemed to consider her words. "Then what is?" Krex asked from his nearby bunk. Santos was quiet for a long moment. "Adaptation, persistence. The willingness to never give up no matter how impossible things seem." "Pretty words," said a voice from the darkness. "But words will not break these collars or open these doors." "No," Santos agreed. "But they might do something else." "What?" Several voices asked at once. Santos smiled in the dim light, though most of the aliens could not see her expression. "Give us hope." Over the following days, Santos began to understand the rhythm of life in the prison camp. Work assignments rotated between mining operations, equipment maintenance, and construction projects. The guards treated all prisoners as disposable labor, but they paid extra attention to species they considered dangerous. Santos quickly realized that being classified as Class D had unexpected advantages. The guards barely watched her. Security around the human work areas was minimal. She was assigned to maintenance duties because the hegemony assumed she was too weak for heavy mining work. This gave her access to areas of the ship that other prisoners never saw. She learned the layout of critical systems, memorized guard schedules, and began to identify weaknesses in the ship's security. More importantly, she started talking to other prisoners during work periods and mealtimes. She learned that Tixel had been a military engineer before his capture. Krex had served as a communications specialist. Groot 7 had been a demolitions expert. Each species brought different skills and knowledge to the prison population. What the hegemony failed to understand was that humans had a unique talent for bringing different groups together. While most species in the galaxy remained isolated within their own kind, humans naturally formed alliances across species barriers. Santos began building these connections slowly and carefully. She never discussed escape plans or resistance directly. Instead, she simply listened to her fellow prisoners, learned their skills, and gradually built trust between different groups. The guards noticed none of this. To them, the small human was exactly what their reports had predicted: weak, harmless, and suitable only for basic labor. They had no idea that Santos was methodically studying every aspect of their operation, building a network of skilled individuals from across the galaxy, and laying the groundwork for something the hegemony had never experienced before. A human-led rebellion was about to begin. 3 weeks after her arrival, Santos knew everything she needed to know about the prison ship. The guards changed shifts every 8 hours. The security cameras had blind spots near the maintenance areas. The ship's power core was located 2 levels below the main prison sections. Most importantly, she had identified 37 prisoners from different species who possessed the skills necessary for what she was planning. The moment came during the morning work rotation. Santos was assigned to maintenance duty in Section D, along with Tixel, Krex, and 12 other prisoners. The guards who supervised this area were lazy, and often left the prisoners unsupervised for long periods. Today, Santos whispered to Tixel as they worked on cleaning air filtration units. The word spread quickly through their network. Each prisoner knew their role. At exactly 10:47 ship time during the guard shift change, Santos activated the first phase of her plan. She had spent days loosening bolts on a primary water pipe that ran through their work area. Now she gave it one final twist. The pipe burst with tremendous force, flooding the maintenance section and setting off alarms throughout the ship. Emergency lights began flashing and automated systems started pumping out water. In the confusion, Santos and her team moved to their next positions. Tixel used his engineering knowledge to access the ship's internal communication system through a maintenance panel. With his multiple eyes, he could see circuit patterns that other species missed. Within minutes, he had created a feedback loop that disabled communications between the prison sections and the bridge. Meanwhile, Krex had reached the ship's waste processing center. His species had natural immunity to toxic gases, allowing him to work in areas where other beings could not survive. He began releasing chemical mixtures that would create smoke clouds throughout the lower decks, without causing permanent harm. Groot 7 and his team had the most dangerous job. They needed to reach the armory on level 5 and acquire weapons for the escaping prisoners. Groot 7's natural strength allowed him to tear through metal barriers that would stop other species. His tree-like appearance also meant the guards underestimated his speed and intelligence. Santos coordinated everything from the central maintenance hub. She had studied human military history extensively during her training. She knew that successful rebellions required timing, coordination, and most importantly, a clear objective that went beyond simple revenge. The hegemony guards reacted exactly as Santos had predicted. They followed standard protocols for prisoner disturbances, seal the affected areas, deploy additional security, and use overwhelming force to restore order. But their protocols were designed for typical prison riots where angry prisoners fought without coordination. This was something entirely different. By the time the guards realized they were dealing with an organized rebellion, Santos and her teams had already achieved their primary objectives. The communications blackout prevented the prison sections from calling for help. The smoke filled the lower decks, making it impossible for guards to see clearly. Most importantly, Groot 7 had successfully reached the armory. Weapons secured, came Tixel's translated message through their improvised communication system. Distributing now, Santos smiled grimly. Phase 2 could begin. The armed prisoners moved through the ship with military precision. Santos had organized them into mixed-species teams that combined different natural abilities. Tixel's multiple eyes provided superior vision. Krex's toxic immunity allowed him to move through the smoke clouds, and Groot 7's strength could overcome physical barriers. But the real advantage was tactical thinking. Santos had studied every species in the prison and understood their strengths and weaknesses. More importantly, she understood how to use them together in ways the hegemony had never imagined. The guards fought bravely, but they were trained for individual combat or small unit actions. They had no experience dealing with a coordinated multi-species force that combined different natural abilities under unified command. "Bridge secured," reported Tixel through their communication system. "Flight controls are ours." "Engineering secured," came another report. "Power systems under our control." Santos allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. But she knew the hardest part was still ahead. General Vextar would not let a prison ship fall without a fight. Even now, other hegemony vessels were probably moving to intercept them. "All teams, Phase 3, she announced. Phase 3 was the most dangerous part of the plan. Santos had realized that simply escaping would not be enough. The hegemony would hunt them down and recapture them within days. They needed something more valuable than freedom. They needed leverage. The ship's computer core contained detailed information about hegemony military operations, prison locations, and strategic plans. If they could steal this data and get it to the right people, it could save thousands of lives and potentially change the balance of power in this sector. But accessing the computer core meant going to the most heavily defended part of the ship. It also meant risking the lives of everyone who had trusted Santos with their freedom. "Tixel, how long do we have before hegemony reinforcements arrive?" Santos asked. "Sensors show 3 ships approaching. Estimated arrival in 47 minutes, came the reply. 47 minutes to break into the most secure area of a hegemony warship, download critical intelligence data, and escape to safety. Santos had planned for this, but she knew the margins for error were razor thin. Groot 7, begin breach operations on computer core level 1. Krex, prepare transport ships for departure. All other teams, defensive positions. We hold the ship until the data is secured. The final phase of the battle was brutal. The computer core's defenses included automated weapons, energy barriers, and security systems designed to stop entire armies. But Santos had advantages the designers had never considered. Tixel could see energy patterns that revealed weak points in the barriers. Groot 7 could absorb damage that would kill other species while continuing to fight. Krex could survive in areas filled with defensive gases that would incapacitate most beings, and Santos could coordinate all of these abilities into a unified assault that overwhelmed the defensive systems. Through sheer tactical sophistication, the breakthrough came with only 12 minutes to spare. Groot 7 tore through the final barrier while Tixel bypassed the last security protocols. Santos rushed to the main computer terminal and began downloading everything she could access. "Hegemony reinforcements in 10 minutes, Krex reported. "All transport ships ready for departure." Santos watched the data transfer progress. 93% complete, then 96%. The hegemony ships would arrive before the download finished. "All teams to transport ships," she ordered. "Prepare for immediate departure." "What about the data transfer?" Tixel asked. Santos looked at the screen. 98% complete. If she waited for it to finish, the reinforcements would arrive and destroy the transport ships. Everyone who had trusted her would die or be recaptured. If she left now, they would escape, but without the intelligence data that could save thousands of other prisoners. "Continue loading," she decided. "I will complete the transfer." "That is suicide." Groot 7's translated voice came through the speakers. "The reinforcements will destroy this ship." "Maybe," Santos replied, her fingers flying over the computer controls. "But the data is more important than one person." "Not to us," came Tixel's response. "We do not leave teammates behind." Santos felt something she had not expected. These beings from different worlds, different species, different evolutionary paths, were willing to risk their lives for one small human they had known for only 3 weeks. 99%, she announced. Through the ship's sensors, she could see the hegemony reinforcements approaching. Massive warships with enough firepower to reduce the prison ship to debris within minutes. 100%. Download complete. Santos grabbed the data storage device and ran toward the transport bay. Behind her, alarms blared as the hegemony ships began targeting the prison vessel. She reached the transport ships just as the first enemy weapons struck the prison ship's hull. The small vessels launched immediately, racing away from the larger ship as it began to break apart under the hegemony attack. Santos looked back through the transport's viewports and watched the prison ship explode in a brilliant flash of light. General Vexitar would find only wreckage and unanswered questions, but in her hands she held information that would change everything. The real war was just beginning. General Vextar stood in the wreckage of what had been prison ship Dominator, his yellow eyes scanning the twisted metal and floating debris. Around him, his officers worked to piece together what had happened. The massive warship that had held over 3,000 prisoners was now nothing more than scattered fragments drifting in space. "Report," he commanded, his voice carrying the cold authority that had made him one of the hegemony's most feared commanders. Commander Zeth approached with a data pad, his usually confident demeanor replaced by obvious confusion. "General, the situation makes no sense. Our initial investigation suggests the prisoners somehow organized a coordinated rebellion that overwhelmed the entire security system." Vextar's mandibles clicked once, a sharp sound that indicated displeasure rather than amusement. "Impossible. Prisoners do not coordinate across species lines. They fight among themselves. That is why the prison system works." "That is what we believed, sir, but the evidence suggests otherwise." Zeth handed him the data pad. "We have recovered security footage from 3 different sections before communications were cut." Vextar took the device and began reviewing the recordings. The first video showed the initial water pipe failure that had started the rebellion. Standard prisoner opportunism. Nothing unusual there. But the second video made him pause. On the screen, he watched the small human prisoner, Maria Santos, giving hand signals to other prisoners of different species. They responded immediately and moved with obvious purpose toward specific locations. This was not chaos. This was coordination. "Show me more," Vextar demanded. The third video was from the armory level. Vextar watched in growing disbelief as a mixed group of prisoners fought their way through heavily armed guards. But this was not the mindless violence he expected from desperate captives. The attack showed tactical planning, coordinated timing, and most shocking of all, the different species were working together as a unified force. "How many prisoners escaped?" he asked. "We estimate between 400 and 600 beings made it to the transport ships before our reinforcements arrived," Zeth replied. "And casualties among our forces?" Zeth hesitated. "Surprisingly light, General. Most guards were stunned or restrained rather than killed. The prisoners seemed to be following some kind of code that minimized lethal force." This information puzzled Vextar more than the escape itself. Prisoner rebellions were typically blood-soaked affairs where years of anger and resentment exploded into brutal violence. Why would escaping prisoners show restraint toward their captors? "What about the human?" he asked. "Security footage shows Santos in multiple locations during the rebellion. She appears to have been coordinating the entire operation." Seth paused, then added reluctantly, "General, we believe the human was the leader of this rebellion." Vextar's clicking stopped entirely. "A human? Leading multi-species forces? That is ridiculous. Humans are Class D. They lack the natural authority to command other species. The evidence is clear, sir. Watch this." Zeth activated another video file. This one showed Santos in what appeared to be the ship's computer core, downloading data while under heavy defensive fire. Other species formed protective positions around her, clearly willing to sacrifice themselves to protect the small human. "Why would they do that?" Vextar asked, more to himself than to Zeth. "Why would superior species follow a weak creature into certain death?" "I do not know, General. But there is more." Zeth called up another file. This is from the final moments before the prisoners escaped. Vexitar watched as Santos reached the transport ships. The human could have boarded immediately and saved herself. Instead, she waited until every other prisoner had reached safety, making herself the last to leave and the most vulnerable to capture or death. She risked her life for aliens, Vextar said quietly. Species she had known for only weeks. Why? "Perhaps we should consult the intelligence archives again, General. Our initial assessment of humans may have been incomplete." Vextar nodded grimly. "Summon Intelligence Division Chief Korth immediately. I want everything we know about humans, and I want it now." 3 hours later, Vextar sat in his command chamber reviewing a massive collection of new intelligence data. Chief Korth, a tall, thin alien with 6 arms and pale blue skin, had brought files that painted a very different picture of humanity than their original reports. "The problem, General, was that our first intelligence gathering focused on human physical capabilities," Korth explained in his precise analytical voice. "We measured their strength, speed, natural weapons, and defensive capabilities. By these standards, humans are indeed among the weakest species we have encountered. Then explain what I saw on those recordings." Korth activated a holographic display. We conducted deeper research into human history and psychology. The results are disturbing. Humans evolved not as solitary predators like most dominant species, but as pack hunters. They developed advanced cooperation skills over millions of years. The hologram showed images of human settlements, cities, and military formations. Unlike most species, humans do not compete primarily within their own kind. Instead, they form large cooperative groups that work together toward common goals. Many species form herds or flocks, Vextar pointed out. True, but human cooperation is different. They willingly follow leaders who are not necessarily the strongest or largest. They choose leaders based on intelligence, planning ability, and something they call charisma. The hologram shifted to show human military operations. More concerning is their approach to warfare. Most species fight until the stronger side wins. Humans fight until their objective is achieved, regardless of casualties or apparent impossibility of success. Vextar studied the images of human conflicts. Their technology is still primitive. Their technology advances rapidly because they share knowledge freely across their entire species. But General, technology is not their most dangerous weapon. Korth paused dramatically. Their most dangerous weapon is their refusal to accept defeat. The hologram showed historical human conflicts. Vextar watched in growing amazement as smaller human forces defeated larger enemies through persistence, tactics, and sheer refusal to surrender. They call it never giving up, Korth continued. When faced with impossible odds, humans do not retreat or surrender. They adapt, find new approaches, and keep fighting. We have found records of human forces continuing to fight even when outnumbered 100 to 1. What about their apparent weakness? That may be their greatest advantage, Korth replied. Other species underestimate humans because they appear harmless. This allows humans to study their opponents, learn their weaknesses, and plan accordingly. The humans who fought their way off prison ship Dominator had been observing our procedures for weeks. Vextar felt a cold sensation in his stomach that he had not experienced since his first battle decades ago. Fear. What are you telling me, Chief Korth? I am telling you that we may have made contact with the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and we dismissed them as weaklings. The hologram shifted to show Earth and the human colonies. General, humans have been in space for less than 200 years, yet they have already established colonies in 17 systems. They have made peaceful contact with 6 other species and formed alliances with all of them. Alliances? Humans have a unique ability to form what they call friendships with members of other species. Not dominance relationships or economic partnerships, but genuine emotional bonds. The prisoners who escaped from Dominator were not following Santos because she was stronger than them. They were following her because she had earned their trust and loyalty. Vextar processed this information slowly. Everything he thought he knew about interspecies relationships was being challenged. What do our xenopsychologists say about this? They believe humans may possess an evolutionary adaptation that allows them to form pack bonds across species lines. No other known species has this ability. It may make humans uniquely suited for galactic leadership. The general stood and walked to his viewport looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, nearly 600 escaped prisoners were spreading the word about human capabilities, and somewhere else an entire planet of humans was preparing for potential contact with the hegemony. Chief Korth, I want you to prepare a complete strategic assessment. Assume humans are not Class D. Assume they are potentially hostile. What does that mean for our expansion plans? Korth's 6 arms moved rapidly across his control interfaces. Within minutes, new projections appeared on the holographic display. If humans possess the capabilities we now suspect, and if they form alliances with other species as readily as the evidence suggests, they could potentially unite our enemies against us. The projection showed human space expanding rapidly through alliance networks rather than conquest. General, humans might not try to defeat the hegemony through military force. They might defeat us by convincing our subject species to rebel. Vextar stared at the projection for long minutes. A small, weak-looking species that could turn his entire empire against itself simply by making friends with his prisoners and slaves. Prepare my ship for departure, he said finally. Set course for the Outer Rim. I need to find these escaped prisoners and learn more about what we are really dealing with. The moon of Kepler 442c was a desolate world of gray rock and thin atmosphere. Its surface was scarred by ancient meteor impacts and violent geological activity. No intelligent life had ever evolved here, and no species had ever tried to colonize it. This made it the perfect hiding place for 600 escaped prisoners and their human leader. General Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying sensor readings of the moon's surface. His intelligence teams had tracked the stolen transport ships to this system after weeks of careful investigation. Heat signatures and energy readings confirmed that a large group of beings had established a base in one of the moon's deep canyon systems. "General," Commander Zeth reported, "we have detected defensive positions around the canyon." "They know we are here." Vextar nodded. He had expected this. The human Santos had shown remarkable tactical awareness during the prison break. She would not lead her followers to a hiding place without preparing for pursuit. "Any response to our communication signals?" he asked. "Yes, sir. They are willing to meet under a flag of truce. The human Santos has agreed to speak with you personally." This surprised Vextar. Most fugitives would either attack immediately or attempt to flee when confronted by a superior force. But Santos was requesting a face-to-face meeting. Either she was more confident than her situation warranted, or she had information that changed the balance of power. "Prepare a shuttle," Vextar decided. "I will meet with this human." "General, that could be extremely dangerous," Zeth protested. "We know nothing about human combat capabilities. This could be a trap." "Everything about humans has been a trap so far," Vextar replied grimly. "I need to understand what we are really dealing with." 2 hours later, Vextar's shuttle landed on a flat area near the canyon entrance. The meeting location had been chosen carefully. It was far enough from both the human base and Vextar's ships that neither side could easily attack the other. Both leaders would be equally vulnerable. Santos walked out of the canyon accompanied by 2 other figures. One was the insect-like Tixel, the other was Groot 7. Both aliens stayed several steps behind the human, clearly marking her as their leader despite her small size. Vextar emerged from his shuttle with 2 guards, but he quickly realized how unnecessary they were. Santos carried no visible weapons and showed no signs of aggression. She walked forward with the same steady confidence she had displayed in his interrogation chamber weeks earlier. "General Vextar," she said, when they were close enough to speak normally. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." "You requested it," Vextar replied. "I am curious to hear what you have to say." Santos gestured toward a large boulder that could serve as a meeting table. Both leaders sat down across from each other, with their respective guards standing nearby. "I want to discuss the future," Santos began without preamble. "Your future and mine." "You are a fugitive leading a band of escaped prisoners," Vextar pointed out. "Your future appears limited." "That depends on what you do in the next few minutes," Santos replied calmly. Vextar studied the human carefully. She showed no fear, no desperation, no sign of someone whose situation was hopeless. Instead, she radiated the quiet confidence of someone who held strong cards in a dangerous game. "Explain," he said. Santos reached into her uniform and withdrew a small data device. Vextar's guards tensed, but she placed it on the boulder between them without making any threatening moves. "This contains complete intelligence data from your prison ship's computer system," she said. "Prison locations, guard schedules, transportation routes, and most importantly, detailed records of every species you have enslaved." Vextar's yellow eyes fixed on the device. The loss of that intelligence data could cripple hegemony operations across 3 sectors, but he maintained his composure. "What do you want for it?" he asked. "Nothing," Santos replied. This answer was so unexpected that Vextar's mandibles clicked involuntarily. "Nothing?" "General, I did not steal this data to sell it back to you. I stole it to give to your enemies. Every species the hegemony has conquered, every resistance group you are fighting, every potential ally who might join a rebellion against your empire." Vextar felt that cold sensation in his stomach again. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to understand what you are really facing," Santos said. "My species has studied galactic history since we reached space. We know about the hegemony's expansion, your military tactics, your approach to conquered populations." She leaned forward slightly. "What you do not understand is that humans have a different philosophy. We do not seek to conquer other species. We seek to liberate them." "Liberation is a luxury for the strong," Vextar replied. "The weak serve the strong. This is natural law." "No," Santos said firmly. That is your law. Natural law says that cooperation succeeds better than domination in the long run. My species learned this through our own history. She activated the data device and holographic images appeared above the boulder. Vextar saw scenes of human conflicts, but also scenes of human cooperation, diplomacy, and alliance building. For most of our history, humans fought against each other just like you assume all species must do. The strong conquered the weak, empires rose and fell, and progress was slow. The images shifted to show modern human civilization. But we learned that cooperation achieves more than conquest. When we started working together instead of fighting each other, our progress accelerated dramatically. We went from primitive agriculture to space travel in less than 10,000 years. Impressive, Vextar admitted, but humans are a single species. The galaxy contains thousands of different species with different needs, different capabilities, different goals. That is where you are wrong, Santos replied. The holographic display showed images of the escaped prisoners working together in their canyon base. Different species were building structures, sharing resources, and planning coordinated activities. For the past month, I have been living with beings from 37 different worlds. Different biologies, different cultures, different evolutionary backgrounds, and they are all working together toward common goals. Vextar studied the images. He could see that Santos was telling the truth. The escaped prisoners had created a functioning multi-species society in less than 4 weeks. How? He asked. By treating everyone as equals, by listening to different viewpoints, by finding solutions that benefit everyone instead of just the strongest. Santos paused. And by giving everyone hope that things can be better. The holographic display changed again. This time it showed Earth and the human colonies. General, my people know about the hegemony. We have been preparing for contact for decades. Preparing how? Vextar demanded. By building alliances, by sharing technology freely, by proving to other species that cooperation is more profitable than conquest. Santos met his gaze directly. Earth currently has mutual defense treaties with 23 different species. If you attack us, you attack all of them. This was information that had not appeared in any of Vextar's intelligence reports. You are bluffing. Check your long-range sensors, Santos suggested. Focus on the edge of this star system. Vextar activated his personal communication device and contacted his flagship. Within minutes, Commander Zeth's voice came through the speaker. General, we are detecting multiple ships entering the system. At least 40 vessels from various species. They appear to be taking defensive positions. Vextar looked up at Santos, who was smiling slightly. Those are not human ships, General. Those are ships from species that have chosen to stand with humanity against threats to galactic freedom. You planned this, Vextar realized. I planned for various possibilities, Santos admitted, but I hoped it would not be necessary. She deactivated the holographic display and looked directly at him. General Vextar, I want to make you an offer, not as a prisoner to her captor, but as one military professional to another. I am listening. Withdraw from human space. Classify Earth and our colonies as a no-contact zone. In return, we will not actively work to undermine your empire. Vextar's mandibles clicked sharply. You expect me to fear a species that cannot even survive without artificial life support? No, Santos replied calmly. I expect you to fear a species that has convinced 40 different alien civilizations to risk their ships and their lives to protect us. The truth of her words struck him like a physical blow. The human was right. The greatest threat was not humanity's technology or military strength. The greatest threat was their ability to inspire other species to work together against the hegemony. And if I refuse your offer? He asked. Then tomorrow that intelligence data begins reaching every resistance group in the galaxy. Within 6 months you will face coordinated rebellions in dozens of systems. Within a year, species that have never cooperated with each other will be sharing resources and tactics against you. Santos stood up from the boulder. The age of conquest through superior firepower is ending, General. The age of cooperation is beginning. You can adapt to this new reality, or you can be destroyed by it. Vextar remained seated, processing everything he had heard. Around him, the sensor readings from his flagship confirmed the presence of a massive multi-species fleet. Above him, the small human walked back toward her canyon base,